Let's dive into the Arizona Cardinals here, though. And what do I expect with them? There's a ton of question marks here. So maybe I do a little bit of a quicker breakdown here because we need to know more about Kyler Murray's health. We don't really know anything about Drew Metzing, the wide receiver coach for Cleveland, is now the offensive coordinator here. Rich Gannon, the head coach, coming over from the Eagles. So that's where I take, I read a ton of reports about what he's saying this offense will be and what he's expecting for Kyler Murray. But this is one that could definitely vastly change as we learn more and more about it. But with Murray there, the Cardinals have typically been around 55% pass, 45% run, and about 40 to 50 plays above league average. Rich Gannon coming over from the Eagles, they're closer to 50-50, but also similarly above league average in terms of plays run. And Gannon has said, we're going to maximize what Murray does best, uses mobility, uses big play arm, and really capitalize on those things. He's meeting with them to chat. He's very impressed with so far how Kyler Murray, all those reports about how he doesn't put the time in and he needs to have a study clause in there. He says he's seen none of that so far since he arrived. I know he's not going to come out in the media and be like, my star quarterback's a piece of shit and not studying his playbook. But it does sound like so far the vibes between these guys, Gannon and Kyler Murray, are phenomenal. Murray saying he's a big fan of everything so far. All the reports are he's really been hammering the rehab as hard as possible. And that's something I had a question with. I questioned Kyler Murray and his work ethic plenty, but everybody so far, his teammates, his coaches, the beat writers, saying he is the first one in, the last one out. And even though he can't necessarily play quite yet, he is hitting the rehab as hard as he can, then hitting the playbook as hard as he can. So it seems like to me he's very, very motivated in what is a big, big year for him, given they'll have a big decision to make whether or not to extend him. It seems like he's really ready to thrive. And he has all the makings of a fantasy stud whenever he is on the field. Quarterback 6, 5, and 8 in points per game the last 3 seasons. You take out last year, that one game against the Patriots where he got hurt the first play of the game, tore his ACL. He had 80% of his games as a top 12 guy last year. So he's very, very solid again. And through his last 3 seasons, 68% of his games have been top 12 with numerous 40 and 35 and 39, just huge spike weeks in addition to some pretty decent consistency. And yes, of course, losing DeAndre Hopkins, that doesn't help by any stretch of the imagination. You wouldn't think, at least, but it doesn't kill him. He goes from 25 points per game to 22 points per game. And then you added Marquise Brown last year. He was actually better in games without Hopkins and with Marquise Brown than he was with both of those guys on the field. I don't know why. Doesn't make much sense to me, but he actually gained points with Marquise Brown in and DeAndre Hopkins out. So to me, it's not a death knell that DeAndre Hopkins is gone here. And the fact that he is rehabbing is hard. One of the risks I had with Kyler Murray is, well, now that Hopkins is gone, they're just going to shut him down for the year and move on to the next one. But it sounds to me like they are really aiming for close to week 1. It probably will be at least a week or 2. But as long as he avoids the PUP, and even if he goes on the PUP and misses 6 games, and then you get him for your last half of the year, this is a dynamic playmaker that has always been a solid fantasy option whenever out in the field. And now he's going to have his best line of his career too with Paris. What's his name? Paris Johnson, I think, is from Ohio State. They took him at 6 overall, their best tackle in the class. And so as long as he's out there, I think Kyler Murray's in a spot even without Hopkins to do some good damage. So I project him for right around what he's done throughout his career, 3,800 yards, 28 touchdowns, nothing too crazy there, given that's what his kind of averages are. That would require him to be out there for most, if not all, of the season. So as we learn more, I'll adjust should he be missing some time. And of course, as I should have highlighted with him at the top, the other big thing with him is that Konami upside. Now, coming off the torn ACL, I wonder if they'll continue to allow him to run it. But 100 carries, 586 yards, 6 touchdowns, again, right in line with what we've consistently seen from Kyler Murray. But maybe, just maybe, they take a little bit of that rushing work off his plate. But Rich Gannon comes from the Eagle system where they love to use their quarterbacks in the run game. They love to create these mismatches, and they maximize their quarterback's dynamic ability. And that's, again, what Rich Gannon continues to cite is we can't rein him in because that's what makes him so damn dangerous. So that's how I expect his pie to be. So not huge in terms of overall passing volume, but not nothing either. And I think by far, as you can see my target shares here on this side, I think Marquise Brown ends up stepping up for a massive target share. And that's just based on what we saw last year without Hopkins in the lineup. He averaged 10.7 targets per game. That was the 5th in terms of wide receiver volume. He also averaged 18.3 points per game in those games without Hopkins. He was the wide receiver 7 in that span, seeing 11, 17, 11, 10, and 9 targets after a mediocre week one. He still put up 14 points in week one, but after that, he truly started to light it up as he got his legs under him in this offense. He was on pace for 181 targets, 122 catches, 1,400 yards and 8 touchdowns. I mean, that's a bona fide wide receiver one season. And I do think as long as he can stay healthy, that's been a big issue with Marquise Brown. But as you can see here, 91 catches, nearly 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns. I don't think that's like too crazy of a projection for this kid. They were best friends in college. They played together in college. They have that pre-established rapport, and we already saw it thriving last year before Hopkins came in and then before Marquise Brown got hurt. So I definitely could see him picking right back up where these two left off to begin last year and making Marquise Brown one of my favorite mid to late 5th round picks. You can get him often as a wide receiver 3. And like I said, I think he has top 12 upside. If he played it out last year without Hopkins, he would have been the wide receiver 7. So I really, really like Marquise Brown. Behind him, I don't think there's a ton to dive into. Rondale Moore can never stay healthy. I see him getting right around the second highest share on the team, and that's only at 14%. So that kind of tells you everything you need to know. He never really played that much better with or without Hopkins. He's always been below 10 yards per reception on his career, despite being a very dynamic guy in college. It just hasn't materialized. They very much use him as a dink or dunk guy. Maybe that role does evolve and change under the new regime. But in all honesty, I think he gets outplayed by Greg Dortch, who every time he gets used, he's not the athlete of Rondale Moore. He's nothing sexy, but he's only had a handful of games where he was actually on the field for over 50% of snaps. Last year, happened only 5 times. One of the games was meh, but 4 of the 5 games when he was on the field for over 60% of the snaps, 13.3, 15.5, 17.0, and 19.3 points per game. And that's half PPR. So full PPR, even higher. He had multiple 20-point days last year in full PPR. Again, only playing really over half the snaps in 5 games. That's pretty damn impressive. I just think the kid's a baller and gets it done. And now he's got a very clear path between Rondale Moore's injury history, between Marquise Brown's injury history. Now no DeAndre Hopkins. Nobody's touching Greg Dortch. I think he's a phenomenal last-round stab. He caught 80% of his balls last year. He's just a reliable baller. That's where he needs to be, gets it done, and he's been good in the red zone too. So I like him. Michael Wilson's the only receiver on this team above 6 feet, the rookie, and apparently he was a highlight play all of OTAs so far in practices. So he could step right into a big role. To me, it's behind Marquise Brown. It is a bunch of question marks. I don't love Rondale Moore because he goes right around round 12, 13, and I don't think he's going to outperform any of the guys that are going undrafted behind him. Maybe I'm wrong. We've seen glimpses of him being solid. The tight end situation is definitely more wait and see for me, given that Zach Ertz, bad knee injury late last year as an old age. Who knows if he does fully recover? If he does, it's just going to be constant nibbling of the cheese between him and McBride, who had some nice glimpses once Ertz got hurt. Was the first tight end drafted last year for a reason. A good athlete, great after the catch in college. Could see his role definitely elevate. And if Ertz is going to be out for half the year or more, I'd actually really like Trey McBride. But until we have more clarity on the injury situation there, it's tough to do much more. And then when we get to the running game, this is very, very quick because Keontae Ingram and Corey Clement are the backups to James Conner. That strikes no fear in anybody. Those guys, as long as Conner is healthy, should see almost zero field time. And that's the case with Conner these last few years. He's been around a 75% snap player. He does lose some of the rushing work to Kyler Murray. That's why he's actually been significantly better when Kyler Murray's out. So his floor is pretty damn good to me because I think he's going to be good either way, with or without Kyler Murray. But if Murray's out, he's actually even better. So ultimately, I have him going for 230 carries, which is right around what he has seen since joining the Cardinals. He's seen 239, 202, and then 183, but he missed 3 games last year. So he would have been on pace for right around 260 had he played the full season. He typically sees about 55% of the rushing market share, with Kyler Murray seeing the other 30%. So I do think 75 to 80% snap player. He nearly plays all the downs. He's seen at least a 11, 8, and 8% target share, at least 40 targets in 3 straight years now. So I think he's going to be a beast. He's the running back 9 in points per game in back-to-back years. Was the running back 5 in points per game actually just 2 seasons ago. 71% opportunity shares in back-to-back year, 280 routes. Like the guy he's a bell cow. He's a bell cow in every sense of the word. And as I was getting at, even without Kyler Murray, He actually averages 21.3 points per game compared to 15 points per game with Kyler Murray. So if Murray does have to miss some time, it becomes the James Conner show even more so. So I'm definitely a big fan here of James Conner going in round 8 or 9. I think we're getting right around a top 15 running back performance that you can get so cheap, too cheap in my opinion. So I'm a huge fan of James Conner this year.
Yeah, so I know I've been throwing cold water on a few of your predictions here and there. I'm not going to do that here. I actually just really quickly will say, without too much elaboration, I agree with you on your Connor take, and I also really like your Marquise Brown take. I would definitely be buyers for both of those guys at the price that they're at. So good call on those. All right.
Yeah, I've been buying a lot of Cardinals truth and best ball. I get a lot of Marquise Brown at his price. I get a lot of James Conner at his price. And at that point, I'm like, well, I might as well draft Kyler Murray when he's going so cheap too and stack up this offense and see what happens. So I have a lot more Cardinals than I probably wanted to, but I do love them at their price tags. I really do. But those are definitely the two highlight players that you mentioned there at the end.
A lot of guys to load up on for a team that went 4-13 last year, but here we are.
Sometimes that's the best when the team sucks and they have to chuck. That often ends up with good fantasy success. So I could care less about the record.
Sometimes I can think of plenty of examples where it's gone the other way as well.
That's very true indeed.
What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.